I'm going a little bit more into not much into details, but show you a bit more concrete what we've been working on in the Future ICT 2 project, particularly in around this concept of Fin4Forum. Let's take a step back first. What is different now with having these decentralized technologies, distributed ledgers, blockchains, and all these things? The big difference to Web 2.0 is people are able to create value networks where they can create and transfer value. That was not there in the Web 2.0 and of course not before, which was also a problem. So you had all these payment providers coming up, and you had to trust these. You had to trust these people with your payments. In addition, these networks provide incorruptible transactions. They are cryptographically secured, and we're not going into the detail of this today, but there's a lot of material if you're interested to read about this. So this allows us to really to transfer real value, and it allows all of us to do this. If you're using a public blockchain and infrastructure, you can simply connect. You can connect to it, very much similar like you connect to the internet using your web browser. And also, that's a claim, but I'm rather confident that this type of value transfer network is more trustworthy than anything we know today. It may not be faster than what we have today, or maybe not cheaper at the moment, but it's more trustworthy. This is a picture from the taxonomy paper Mark primarily wrote together with us. You will hear more about the overall thing in his workshop. I just want to highlight two things which are important for the design of our system. So what you know of, maybe have heard from Bitcoin and other currencies, is you have this level of consensus. Proof of work, maybe you have heard. So there are these miners who make sure transactions are actually validated and people can make these transactions. That's all happening on the blockchain itself. So, oh, I'm sorry. That's a strange thing. So that all happens on the chain, right? So what Fin4 now is doing is we are trying to extend this to the real world, in the sense that the tokens like a Bitcoin are not only working on the chain itself, but have an effect on actors on the real world. So for example, if you want to incentivize people to plant trees, because we think that's a sustainable activity, we can argue that, but let's take this as an example. The Fin4 system allows communities to define a token that actually says this is a tree coin, and you can get it if you plant a tree. You have to prove it. Proving mechanisms will be discussed in the workshop of Stefan. But that would be the idea. And it's important to understand that all users can create tokens. It's not a specific group, it's not the administrators, it's not us who started this, but anyone can. That has interesting consequences, because then you have to decide, well, which tokens do we accept in the system finally, because if just everybody creates tokens, there will be a lot of spam and tokens we don't want and don't need. This is a topic I will be talking about in the workshop in the afternoon on incentive design. The second aspect of it is we have more than one token. Bitcoin is just one token, right? This whole system consists of these Bitcoins. So you can do value transfer, but you cannot do much more with it. More recently, systems got created, smart contract engines and other projects in the blockchain space that use more than one token. And as well in the Fin4 system, we have more than, I will just show it in the next slide. But that also raises interesting questions about the interactions of these tokens. The token itself can have different characteristics, and you can combine them and have interactions between tokens. And it's very fast becoming complex in designing such systems. So this is how the Fin4 system currently looks like, or it's not all implemented yet, but we still have a year. But So we have the tokens on that level. These are the tokens I just mentioned. Let's call them positive action tokens. Everybody of you could think of something and create a token around it. Planting a tree, recycling, reducing CO2, helping people in need, educating children, etc., etc. Anything in the large scope of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals would fit. But I also said everybody of us has the same rights. It's a network of peers. It's not a server with administrative rights and everybody else like we have it today, but everybody of us has the same rights in the system. So we need to think about how do we come up with governance, how do we come up with decisions about the whole network. And this is the top layer. We currently think about three concepts, three tokens we probably would like to implement to get this system running on a meta level. One is around governance, meaning which of the tokens we really would like to accept. There's a fancy type of voting mechanisms, you will hear in the workshop in the afternoon. The second one is economics. We would like to provide the projects or teams or communities or individuals who create tokens a possibility to have a sort of a backing, like a reserve currency in the system. So we would create, one way to do this is to create a similar amount of Fin4 liquidity tokens that basically act as a bank, central bank or a reserve bank. And the third one is reputation. Because we want, so we're talking about the multi-dimensional incentive system. That means it's not about the amount of tokens you own in any of these CO2 tokens, recycling tokens. I mean, it's a large part of how effective the system can be. If you have the motivation to get these tokens, then actually the system is kind of working. But reputation in the system is independent and should be independent from the amount of tokens you have. It should not be depending on wealth. And there's still current thinking about how we connect the reputation concept and tokens with the governance. So in a way, we think if people do actions and activities on the network, they should gain reputation because they have the network, and this over time should allow them to participate in the governance of the project. We can discuss this as well, but that's a general idea. A slightly more technical description is the function architecture. You can see three levels. The base level is the blockchain. We are currently using the Ethereum smart contract engine and blockchain for the project. On top of that, you have a server, which we call Fin4Core, which provides some of the things the black tokens on the previous slide cover. So we have reputation, governance, economics. I haven't talked about identity, but that should be a part as well. And on top of that, you have clients, like a mobile app or a web application, whose I will show the web application right after this talk, that allows to connect, right, to the server. The server makes sure this governance and economics part is covered. And we provide these client applications, how to say, as a proposal. You can use them, you don't have to. You can also directly, if you are a programmer or developer or interested in this, you can also directly connect to the server. The whole system, technologically and from a governance point of view, is open and accessible to anyone. These screenshots are not very current, they are a few weeks old, but you will get an impression in a minute when Kuzai will show you the application on the web. But just to say it once, so on the left you see a screen that gives you the possibility to create a token. You think of a name, let's go with the tree coin example. I call it tree token, I say I want to have 10 million of them, and I give a short description. You can get a tree token if you plant a tree. So the action is planting the tree. But of course you can think of tokens that have more than one action. and in the future maybe other people in the network can propose actions that are accepted for a specific token. It's open in all directions. We have been doing quite some research in all these areas. It's a complex domain, I would say, and just to give you a brief, I'm not going through this list, but just to give you a brief idea what we are up to for the final year 3. On the conceptual level, we still have to do some of the crypto-economic work. I just mentioned governance and reputation. On the architectural design, we still work on the taxonomy. I think we have a very good first iteration of this. But of course, other people are working on this as well, and we are getting feedback, etc. So we are refining the taxonomy and intend to publish it later as a paper. Stefan mentioned the requirements. In the beginning, we collected a lot of these requirements, and now we are one by one going through them and prioritizing them and deciding what is still possible to implement and what has to be left for a later stage. But definitely we want to achieve a certain completeness of the functionality by end of project. The Fin4.net demo will be shown by Kuzai. I'm not talking too much about this. And what we also will see in the demo in a few minutes is one of the latest achievements of the two guys on the green bench, connecting IoT sensors to the system. So it's not a human saying, this, I did this, and somebody else says, yes, you really did this, but the sensor puts data, and through that data you have an assurance that something happened, and get a token for this. Or actually the sensor gets a token, that's up for discussion. And the use cases, we have KISS and WWF here today, two organizations that are very close. I mean, there's a lot of mind share on what we do and what they do in their specific fields. And so we got together over the last few months and decided to run together pilot projects. And these are, for the moment, the two official public-facing pilot projects we intend to implement in 2019, so over the next few months. So the project addresses probably 3 stakeholder groups. One is students. Dirk already mentioned Beth. This year we had, again, you can see the figures here, a very international crowd that over 1 week put all their compassion, intelligence, and energy into resolving some of the questions I was just highlighting to you for WWF as well as for KISS and other projects. Another group are, of course, researchers. We are running a researcher for researcher meetup around blockchain technology in Zurich a few times during the semester. And yeah, if you're interested. I'm sorry?
This is after work.
This is after work, yeah, there's always an apéro. So if you need an additional incentive to come, there's always an apéro as well. And of course, Stefan mentioned that we try to involve citizens. We don't want to be an ivory tower project only. It's good to have an ivory tower, to sit there quietly and think, which is not possible in many places outside. But to be effective, you have to go outside as soon as you have thought enough, I guess. And what we're trying with the citizens, with the Climate City Cup, as we just renamed it, I will get to that, is could we take this whole idea of incentivizing positive action to cities? Cities are the places where many people meet, we have urbanization, it will even increase in the future. There's infrastructure, there's certain governance regimes are there, so there's it's a good environment to try out these things. And so we are thinking about, or we're actually doing it already, a climate city competition in the sense of the Olympic Games. So we wanted to call it Climate City Olympics, but guess who was against this? The IOC was not happy calling it Olympics. Maybe you could mix up the two things. We don't know. But to avoid problems, we skip the Olympics. The spirit stays, just the name changes. And the other thing is, we found with Climathon a project that is very similar in spirit and mind, and we decided to go together with them to join forces and resources and make this happen during this year. And before I forget, ICLAY is the largest city club or association worldwide, and they have been quite convinced about this idea and joined us at a very early stage. So we will have a lot of outreach for this first round and piloting the Climate City Club this year to be able to continue the project also in other spaces. All right, I think that's it from my side. All of us are here today. Kusai, Stefan, Mark, myself, Magnus, who just recently joined, the photo is a bit older, Max, who cannot be here this week, and Karen, Dina, and Owen. Thanks for your attention and have a good rest of the day.